book can take you anywhere. Turn the pages and you'll be there. Come on, join us, you'll see. We're reading with Carylee.
Hi, friends, and thank you for joining me for another Read with Carylee. I am your host, as always, Carylee, and I am so glad that you are here to share another story from another author with us. Now, we have authors from all around the world, but before we get to our author, so remember to hit subscribe and ring that bell so you are not missing one author from anywhere. It could be an author from down your street. So welcome, Miss Regina Barrett, to Read with Carylee.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we are so glad to have you. And you are, another fantastic author from somewhere in the US. And I'm going to let you share with us where you're reading to us from today.
So today I'll be reading to you guys from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, yes, I love North Carolina. I have a lot of friends down in North Carolina. Hi, guys. So we're going to jump right into your story today, and it is Ruby Joins the Choir. So for any of you who have always wanted to join the choir, let's take a look and see what Ruby has in store for us on her journey. Miss Regina Barrett, take it away.
Okay, so today I'm going to read Ruby Joins the Choir. It's a really fun story about a little girl who wants to join the choir and has to follow her dreams to do so. So let's get into it. Early one Sunday morning, Ruby and Grammy got dressed in their fancy hats and dresses and drove to church. Ruby was very excited and happily hummed during the entire ride. As they approached the church doors, Ruby could hear loud voices singing beautifully. When the doors opened, Ruby realized it was the church creating such sweet melody. Ruby sat through church daydreaming and imagining herself singing on stage. What if that was me singing with the choir? She thought. Ruby could hardly wait for church to end so she could tell Grammy how much she enjoyed listening to the choir. Grammy, here. Ruby, honey, I'm a bit tired. Let's talk when we get home and you have changed out of your dress, Grammy replied. Excited, Ruby rushed into her room when they arrived at the house. She quickly changed out of her Sunday outfit and into her pajamas. Ruby ran into the living room and found Grammy sitting in her favorite rocking chair. What is it, child? What has gotten you so worked up and excited? Grammy asked. Ruby looked up at Grammy with a huge smile and asked, did you hear the choir today at church? Did you see the way they swayed? Why, yes, Grammy replied while smiling. The choir sang beautifully today. Ruby began to jump up and down with glee. She looked up at Grammy and said, I want to join the choir, Grammy. Can I please? Oh, Ruby, that would be great. Are you sure that you would like to sing with the choir at church? She asked. Ruby grabbed Grammy by the hands and pulled her off her rocking chair. They joyfully laughed and spun around the room like a carousel as Ruby sang, I do, I do, I do. But, Grammy said with her finger in the air, Ruby, we have a few steps to take before joining the choir. What do we need to do, Grammy? Asked Ruby. First, we must let Miss Horn know you would like to join the choir. She is the lady that plays the piano. We can meet her on Wednesday night when the choir has practice. That night, Ruby sang herself to sleep. She was anxious for Wednesday to come. She knew that she would do well because she had always sung for family and friends. The next morning, Ruby sang as she got ready for school. She hummed a tune on the bus ride to school. And she daydreamed about singing in the choir during class. During the bus ride home, the bus driver could hear Ruby humming. He told her she had a very nice voice. Ruby thanked him and told him that she was going to sing in her church choir. I know you will do great, Ruby, he shouted as he drove off. Later that night after dinner, Grammy heard Ruby singing in the bathtub. Ruby was singing one of her favorite songs while imagining herself on a big stage with bubbles everywhere. Tuesday morning, Ruby woke up ready to take on the day. She sang and sang and sang all day long. When she got home, she hurried to eat her dinner and skipped off to bed. Grammy asked, Grammy, if I hurry and get to bed, it will be Wednesday soon. And you know what that means, Ruby replied. Grammy smiled and confirmed, yes, Ruby, I do. Well, good night then, kiddo. Finally, it was Wednesday morning. Ruby jumped out of bed to get ready for school. She spent the whole day practicing the song she wanted to sing for Mrs. Horn. She practiced while feeding the fish. She practiced during recess. Ruby practiced while watering the classroom garden. That afternoon, Ruby burst through the front door of her house. Ruby dropped her book bag on the floor and ran into Grammy's room shouting, Grammy, Grammy! Practice with the choir. At 5 o'clock, they jumped into Grammy's bright red car and sang a joyful song all the way to church. When Ruby walked into the church, everyone was excited to see the young girl who was eager to join their choir. Mrs. Horn welcomed Ruby and asked her to sing a short song. For the first time ever, Ruby felt nervous to sing. She didn't know why she felt that way. Ruby looked around at all the smiling faces, expecting her to sing. Her eyes were wide open, and she felt sweat beads forming on her forehead. She opened her mouth to sing, but nothing would come out. Grammy took Ruby by the hand and began singing the song they had been singing in the car. I am who I am, and I can be anything with you, oh Lord, you guide me. Ruby joined in with a shy, shaky voice. Oh Lord, please lead me, guide me through. Mrs. Horn began to play the melody for the song on the piano. Ruby's voice began to get stronger, and the choir joined in, singing softly in the background. Suddenly, Ruby belted out with a strong, beautiful voice. Her voice was so sweet that it amazed the choir, and they stopped singing. Everyone began to clap for Ruby. Grammy was so proud of Ruby. She hugged her and whispered in her ear, "Great job, sweetheart. Remember, whenever you feel shy, to just open your heart and sing." Ruby gleefully practiced during the rest of the week. She sang while painting Fluffy's nails. She practiced while Grammy did her hair. And she hummed while she washed the dishes after dinner. On Sunday, Ruby joined the choir on stage. Before she sang her song, she remembered what Grammy said. She opened her heart and sang so beautifully that everyone in the audience stood up and applauded. Church, everyone greeted Ruby and told her what an amazing job she had done. Ruby was so happy that she could not wait until next Sunday to sing with the choir again. During the car ride home from church, Ruby smiled with glee. Grammy looked in her rearview mirror and said, with practice and a bit of courage, you can do anything you put your mind to. Yes, Grammy, Ruby gasps and shouts. Up next, join the school Okay. Grammy and Ruby laughed as they rode off into the sunset. The end.
With Carylee.
Well, that was a beautiful story. It took me back to when I wanted to join my church choir, and unfortunately there was an age limit, so I had to wait a little bit. But with that, with Ruby, she just really had a passion for singing and singing with the church choir. So that was an amazing story. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Thank you for letting me. I really enjoyed it.
Yes. So, is that autobiographical story, or what made you write this story?
So the story of Ruby joining the choir obviously would resonate for me, for many like yourself, young girls, even the young girls inside of us older women, because we remember trying to sing at church. I grew up in church,
Mhm.
singing in multiple choirs. My daughters are a big inspiration to the story as well. They sing and they sing at church also. Um, and just me wanting to write books. Originally, I really didn't know if I wanted to write for adults or for children. Um, and I had procrastinated like we often do. And I said, okay, well, I'll write something, but not right now. I don't feel like it right now. But my
Uh-huh.
daughter, she really wanted to become an author, and it was just out of the blue. And she told me that she was going to be an author and write books by Dr. Madison Barrett. That's her name. And so I thought,
Okay.
wow, let me figure out, what she would need to do. And so in my, you know, push to do that, just to make sure that I knew the steps for her to take, this story also came to me, and I wrote the story. And it, like I said, I thought about my life and how it would resonate with other young women and other young girls, and that's how the story came about.
Wow, I love that. So you you put off being an author, and your daughter came and said, "I want to be an author." So for the inspiration from that,
Yes.
and just wanting to be able to help her, that brought this story about. That's amazing.
Yes, it lit a
Wow.
fire under me because I was just sitting there not doing
Well,
anything.
well, we are so glad that she lit a fire under you. And, that was almost the same thing for me. Like I wrote all my life, but I never thought of writing children's books. And then it wasn't until my son came to me and I wanted to help him solve a problem that I decided to actually write a children's book. So,
Wow.
we get inspiration from all over. But
Yes.
were there any books that inspired you to become an author, or inspired you at all when you were growing up?
Yes, I had several books. Some of my favorite books, I would just kind of read over and over and over, growing up. But a lot
Mhm.
of those books were like bigger chapter books and things
Oh,
like that. I would read just kind of oh gosh, the name just went away from me. But I used to really like this book, and it's kind of weird because it's this book about the Berenstain Bears. And I,
uh-huh.
I would really like that book. And it would always be like, I can't remember the title of that one book, but it was like Brother and Me, or it would be like Sister and Me. And they would just
Uh-huh.
have like different books in the series of it. And I would read a lot of those books. And then as like I said, I gotten older, I would read like the bigger books. So like the Harry Potter books and the things like
Mhm.
that. So I too wasn't thinking, okay, well, I'm going to do small, age children's books, like beginner readers, children's books. If I had written anything, it would have been for, teens and up. But I'm really glad that I kind of tapped into this age range, because in writing this first book, I've been inspired. And this is actually the first of a series of Ruby books. So there are
Okay.
more
That was
Ruby
going to be
books.
my next question. Good.
There are more Ruby books coming. And but what I realized, while being on the journey for writing beginner reader children's books, is that you can use your imagination to kind of relate a story in a way that you may not necessarily be able to in an elder age children's book or a
Okay.
chapter book or an adult book. So I really like that. And I'm a really creative person by nature. So I can
Mhm.
get really creative and I don't have to kind of be in this little box of the right way to do things or the right way to say things. And you can just be free. And I like that about this age range.
Okay. So, do you find it hard sometimes to come up with the themes? Like you said, you are doing Ruby books.
I don't actually. It's actually been pretty easy for me. I always say that when you have a gift, it will come naturally. So for
Yes.
me, to be honest, Ruby joins the choir, and my publisher kind of gets at me a little bit, but I wrote that book in 30 minutes,
Okay.
and I had no idea that I was going to write the book. Okay, you're getting the exclusive here. Really, I wrote it. Um, I just remember the name Ruby came to me. And I was just sitting there and I thought, Ruby, why do I keep thinking Ruby, Ruby, Ruby?
Hmm.
And so I sat down a piece of paper and again, the procrastination, right? And I said, oh, I'm not going to do that. So I wrote it, I wrote down the name. And then I wrote down just like bits and pieces, choir, singing, and it just came together. And so after that, I said, you know what? I want to continue Ruby. I want to watch Ruby go through different challenges, solve different problems. And so far, the next few titles, they just kind of have already come because they're
Okay.
inspired and gifted. So I really enjoy that part of it.
Wow, that's amazing. And well, since you are going on this journey, this kind of unexpected journey, what is a word of advice that you would give to any young author like your daughter who is wanting to go through this process?
I would tell them to write what they feel, number one. Always express themselves. I do come across, even my daughters, I do come across others who say, I want to write a book, but I just don't think what I have to write is going to be good. And I always tell them, just write it. Whatever you think about, whatever you feel, anything that matters to you, just write it because you never know what kind of story will come out of it, and how great that story is. And even if that story does not resonate or touch one set of people, it can touch someone and it could change someone's life. So I always tell them to always, just push for it. If you get an idea, write it out, and
Yeah.
just keep going that way.
Oh, that is amazing. Well, Regina, thank you so much for, coming and telling us about Ruby. And, you know, we're so glad that there's actually going to be more from Ruby.
Yes. Thank you
So
so much for
thank,
having me. I really enjoyed
yes,
it. I love this show.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. And thank you to our friends who are joining us today. You heard it first. You can hear more about Ruby coming up, and you'll be able to see more on the adventures that Ruby will be going on.
Yes.
So don't forget to subscribe, and you're going to come and see us next Saturday to see who's going to be on Read with Carylee. So remember to always grab a book and read. We're so glad that you joined us. See you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Carylee.
Thanks for watching another amazing episode of the Read with Carylee Show. We have amazing authors coming by every week. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe below. You don't want to miss a thing.